never such large and important crowd as we have here today. As Annika said, my name is Christian Wernberg-Tougaard, and I'm heading up healthcare and manufacturing for Fujitsu in EMEAI. But beside that, I have been, for the last 20 years, been deeply involved in public sector digitalization, addressing how can public sector gain value from digitalization, how can increased digitalization help the citizens, help public sector to become more efficient, and basically how can the transformation happen utilizing the technology, the digital technology. And these are some of the topics I would like to address today around what is it that we see as the big trends and directions, and what are the challenges we see, and how can public sector respond to that. And I do apologize for the slides, in the sense that I have had like 2 hours to look through David's slides and add some of my own. But I mean, we will get a meaningful conversation out of this, and I'm happy to take questions, because I really see this as an opportunity to have dialogue rather than monologue. So, if we're looking 20 years back in our society in general, we saw things like Pokemon. Pokemon was, when my boy was playing it, a Nintendo-based gray screen 8-bit application. I had the same mobile phone. I was actually looking for it down in the cellar, trying to, so I could show how big it was. It was like this size. And we had video, VHS. Before that was Betamax, but that left out in where nobody remembered it. But through those 20 years, things have changed. We have seen digital content, we have seen digital transformation, we've seen platform convergence, we've seen that we move from the analog to the digital. All of this that we today now see as kind of a natural development. But what it really have done in terms of transformation is that it have aggregated all the services we had back in the old days into one uniform platform. So we now have everything in our smartphone. So we have the Pokemon Go, the augmented reality, as part of the smartphone experience. We have the ability to either watch the old VHS taxi series on Netflix, or we have the ability to order our taxis through Uber. All of this is due to digital transformation. But what's the really interesting part here is that this is what have happened the last 20 years. What will happen the next 10 years is going to be even faster, even more transformational, even more impacting of the way we do everyday life. And this is some of the things I would like to address on. Some of the megatrends, which I'm sure that you're perfectly aware about, because this is what everybody is talking about. The population growth, the urbanization, what will happen with the sustainable environmental conditions, how do we preserve our planet, how do we ensure that we can use healthcare. So I shouldn't step on these cables. I think I'll move over here. Oh yeah, I could go over there. I don't mind where I am, basically. So as long as the clicker is working and my laptop is not running dry of power, which is a real risk, by the way. So all of these changes are happening, and they are real. And some of them are more impacting on the way we do things today than others. So take the demographic changes, for example. We are all, and that's good for us, going to live much longer. But it's not good for government, because government have to pay our pensions way longer than they used to. So in the old days, when the pension schemes of today were designed, the expectation were that people would live like 5 years after they retired. So when they retired, they would live for 5 years. So we had to pay pension for 5 years. That's good. Now they live for 15 years. That's a bit of a challenge. At the same time, our healthcare has improved. So we're getting much better in actually curing people, giving them the right medicine, making them more healthier. The problem is that the older you get, the more kind of not really sick you become, but you become sick of chronic diseases. So the number of people over 80 which have more than 2 or 3 chronic diseases are increasing rapidly. And these type of diseases are very, very expensive. So we have this kind of conflict for public sector, that the demographic change is real in terms of money. And how do we deal with that? So that's a challenge. Urbanization, climate change. So urbanization is also something that is happening. Projection is that by 2050, something like 80 to 90% of the world population will live in cities. There will be an increasing number of megacities, that's cities beyond 10 million people. This is going to be a real challenge. I mean, we are a country of 5 million people. Sweden, I guess, is around 9 million people. And we try to do our digital enablement in terms of coordination between, in Denmark, between 98 different municipalities that should all agree on how to do service enablement for the citizens. In Sweden, you have way more municipalities who have the autonomy to do whatever they want to do without any kind of coordination. But the thing is, when you have a city of 10 million people, you suddenly have the power to basically construct your service enablement in a unified way so that you can serve in the most digital, in the most efficient manner at all. And this is where we see a clearly trend in driving this kind of holistic city enablement, digital enablement. Somebody label it smart city or digital city or city enablement or whatever. But the aim is to consolidate all the services around what in the old days was a municipality, now in a city. So, we see a lot of stuff in terms of the devices. A lot of you have your smartphones and are using it right now to hopefully do some text messaging questions, I guess, or tweeting around what we're doing. But if we again look back, 2003 for the Popal inauguration, nobody had a smartphone. 2015, everybody had a smartphone. Think about, that's like 10 years of digital transformation. What do you think the next 10 years would look like? I don't know, I have no idea. Or I do have some ideas because I can see some of the technologies that are emerging, and I think that I have an idea on what will happen. And I truly believe that it's going to be really great. But I don't know whether we'll have devices like that or whether we will be present virtually through 3D holocasts or whatever. What's also really interesting in terms of the technology shifts that are happening is that we are moving into what I would call the age of automation. And this is something that's going to impact not only the manufacturing, where you can say the robots is taking over and the robots will automate this or that, or software robots, but it's automation in every corner of life. To exemplify the transformation that's going on, we could look at the cabs in London. So this is when you watch the Sherlock Holmes. The Fujitsu office in London is actually located in Baker Street. So it's a very, very kind of Sherlock Holmes kind of mood around that neighborhood. So the Sherlock Holmes Hotel, the Sherlock Holmes Museum, everything Sherlock Holmes in Baker Street. At that time, you had the man and his horse and a carriage. That was the way of transportation. Then there was the invention of combustion. So the engine was invented. And that meant that we got the black cab, which is something we use today. Anybody here knows what it takes to become a black cab driver? Is it 1 month, 2 months, 1 year? It's 2 years, 2 years of education. And what you have to learn in those 2 years is that you have to learn every single street in London. You need to know when there is congestion, whether there are roadworks going on in those streets. You need to know all of that by heart in your brain so that you can navigate from A to B in the most efficient way. This is a 2-year learning period with a very, very tough exam. But then comes up something called GPS, and up comes people like Uber that enables digitally GPS localization and how you drive from A to B in the most efficient way. That transformation is evidential. What's also quite interesting with this is the first jump was done in like 300 years, took 300 years. The next jump took like, 100 years. The most recent jump, and of course, yeah, is now. And the other point was, I don't know why they messed up my automation here, but the thing is, the technology evolves faster and faster and faster. But what's also really interesting here is that in the old days we had a human required. We needed a guy to steer the horse. We had a guy that was driving the car, and also we need an Uber driver. But in the future, we don't need any humans. The human is gone. And this is not only true for the cab drivers, or the lorry drivers, or the bus drivers. It's also true for the journalists. I don't know, hope there's any journalists here. The journalists are being taken over, so reporting from a football game, for example. They've done studies where they were comparing robot-written football analysis and human, and the robot one got the highest score for the best quality. So that's going to be a challenge. At the same time, in public sector administration, we have already seen automation. So Sweden have actually in some areas been leading on that. So Försäkringskassan in their dental implementation had a scheme that was running with 99.97% automation, meaning that of all the dental cases they had, 99.97% of them was completely automated and could be calculated within 2 to 3 seconds. This is the future. And it's also the future for public sector administration, that automation will be fundamental in driving transformation. So, I'll walk back so I can see how much time I'm spending. Another thing that is quite interesting is the Internet of Things. What we need to understand which I can't see. It's very small. I can't see it, honestly. Yeah, I'm also short-sighted. I guess a combination of that, Dane and short-sighted, that's not a good combo, apparently. So we're going to see a tremendous revolution in the amounts of digital devices. People project that the Internet of Things will have more than 50 billion devices connected in. So we'll have the intelligent cars, we'll have the intelligent refrigerators, we'll have everything that we know today will be connected. One of the things where our research and innovation have done is the connected cow. So we are monitoring cows in real time in order to help the farmers know when it's best to look after the cows, basically. So all of that is going to happen. A lot of these technologies will infuse into our daily life. But at the same time, the information we have, and public sector information is actually quite valuable to a lot of fraudsters, to people who want to do things not as good wrongdoers. Projected will be that it will cost around 1.4 trillion pounds in 2019, just the value of the data breaches. And this is something that is a true concern. So from a public sector point of view, some of the trends, I'm not really sure this is readable. You'll get the slides anyway, so you can drill down and read them in more detail. But I think that there are a number of transformations that are impacting public sector administration, and we touched on a few of them, and I'll skip fast over a number of the others. But I think that there are two paradigms that you need to understand. There are the social economic changes, which is one set of paradigm shifts, and then there are the technology shifts. And you need to be aware of both of them. And if you don't, you can't have one without the other, basically. So these two needs to go hand in hand. And that's also why I'm, as an advocate for greater public-private collaboration. So we need to collaborate to a much greater extent to really utilize all the benefits from technology, from the changes that we're seeing in the society in order to drive innovation and pave the forward road. So, I think that one of the things that government have been trying to do for many years is around enabling e-governance and e-governance systems. And I have a slide a little bit later which elaborate a little bit on some of the more key important things. But the ability to provide service for the citizen 24/7 is what the citizen expects. I mean, if I want to order my travel tickets, I don't want to be confined from 9 to 3 or from 12 to 2 or whenever I can. So everybody wants to be in a world where they can access information and where they can get the information when they want, at the time they want. And this leads us to the kind of the future of public services and where public services could be moving. I think that there will be the collaborative government and the collaborative governance. I think this is, as we started with, why is Denmark, or somebody would claim that Denmark is ahead. That could be debatable. But why would it be that we, at least in some benchmarks, are further ahead than Sweden, for example? And I think that one of the reasons is that we have been able to facilitate a collaborative model between the different levels of government. So we have a collaboration between state, region, and municipality. And that collaboration have led to a situation where we are able to drive very, very strong, unified service delivery. So, for example, we have a text messaging service that goes for all public sector. So if public sector wants to send the citizen a text message, they can basically, simplified, send a text message to the person's personal number, so their CPR number, as it's called in Danish. The same if they want to pay money to the citizen. They can just pay the money to the CPR number. And they don't have to care about whether the citizen have this bank or that bank, or whether they prefer to have a check or a cash or whatever. They just pay to the number. No fuss, very easy. That's why they call it in Danish nem. So everything in Denmark is nem or easy. Nem text, nem konto, nem ID. So everything is built around this concept of easy. And I think the reason why they've realized that is because they had this kind of collaborative facilitation where they, in partnership agreements, acknowledge the fact that they need to collaborate in order to bring the government and also bring the easiness to the citizens in a much faster perspective. When looking on, then one of the big topics is the city and the city capabilities. There is a tremendous amount of tasks that needs to be digitized. I'll exemplify this in a second. And as I said, this collaboration between the governments, strongly advised to have that, but also to start working smarter, meaning that the citizens and the citizens' expectation to the government is basically vital. The citizens expect, as I said, that the government is there for them, not that they are there for the government. So you need to have this citizen centricity as one focus. So have the customer incentive in the center. In Fujitsu, we aim to actually try to drive what we call human-centric innovation. So we try to innovate around the citizen, around the human, and make the solutions that basically enables value for the human or for the citizens. And government needs to do the same, needs to have the citizens in the center. And furthermore, they need to look on the customer journey. How can we ensure that the interaction, the way that we do our collaboration, the requirements we have, the way we do our processes, that is fully tied in to a modern way of thinking. So looking at how do large retailers, for example, do their shopping. So when you go in and do one-stop shopping at Amazon, for example, why don't you have one-stop shopping in public sector, for example? What is hindering that you can that? Is that because you have a kind of steering model, a governance model which decides, as we did in Denmark? We had the example I always use is that, like 15 years ago, I made myself very, very unpopular because we had, at that time, 298 municipalities. And there was a big architectural conference, and I stood up and said, why cannot municipalities have one single building assessment tool for every single municipality? Why is it that you, as a citizen, every time you go in the door in one municipality, it's completely different from what the other municipality have? You can't move employees from one municipality to the other. You can't, as a citizen, go from one municipality to the other. You'll get different levels of service. There will also be what we in Denmark call retssikkerhed, or the rule of law challenges. Why is that? And the answer was just, we don't want to violate the Constitution, because the Constitution have given the municipality the freedom of self-governance. So they can governance themselves. And I said, that's stupid, because it's not like that you get different electricity out of the plug. It's the same kind of standard of electricity, and the water quality is also the same. Why can't the IT be the same? Now we moved into an ecosystem where the municipalities are actually working together to realize joint solutions and common solutions, and to collaborate on bringing the same solution model to their caseworkers, but also eventually to the citizens. So I think that's a great step forward. This will then bring me to this slide, which is a little bit around the e-government development index. So this is benchmarking how we are doing stuff and where we are in the Nordics. And we can see we are okay on the general e-government index, but on online service index we are not really there. Or are we? So my claim is, and I've been discussing this with the Danish national CIO, because they're mad about this, these index, by the way. So the reality here is that when these guys are asking questions, they're often asking questions like, how many online services do you have? And people then say, yeah, we have several thousands here. In Denmark, we have maybe, 100? Oh, but then you used to have 1,000, now you have 100. Then you must have, then you climb down the online service index. But the reality is that these indexes now reflect that data integration and interoperability and automation have taken over. So a vast number of citizens in Denmark don't need to report anything anymore. They don't need an online service. What should they use it for? Because the government already know the data. They already have interconnected the information. They have already put it forward, already used it to deduct your taxes. In Denmark, we actually, the majority of the citizens have a one-stop clicking of accepting their final tax report. They can just press a button and say accept, and then everything will, and they will get some money, or they will have to pay some money. That's it. They don't need to validate all the information. They don't need online services to put in all of this information. So be careful with these indexes. But still, I think there is a significant difference between the digitalization approach in Denmark compared to Sweden or in some of the countries. So one of the countries I, to some extent, admire is Singapore. Singapore is going all in on the digital transformation agenda. They are also the first which have made a national kind of smart city strategy. They've made an ecosystem for autonomous cars that can drive around in the whole city, basically. I mean, in Denmark, we think we can field test a few streets somewhere. I think in Sweden, Anka mentioned in Göteborg, they will do some testing. In Finland, they have some buses driving around. They drive 10 kilometers an hour, but still they're testing it. But Singapore, they go all in, and the same goes for Estonia. The Estonians, whoa. They have everything on one card, basically. They have the PKI, they have the citizen ID, they have e-voting. They basically have digitized everything. And why? Because they didn't have all this clutter of the past as we have in Denmark and have in Sweden. And I think this is also, it's not really justifying why we're not making the next steps or the right steps, but it gives us a view around what it is that we need to do. So I think my time is running up very fast. We also want to have some time for chatting and for questions. There are some more slides. I think that digital healthcare is extremely important. I mean, I'm working with this every day and trying to strategically influence the mindsets in Europe, Middle East, Africa from a Fujitsu point of view. So of course I think it's important. Education, the way we use technology in education, also extremely important. Open public data, the aspiration around government transparency and the capability of showing the citizens where we are or what we are doing, also very important. Smart city, everything around smart city, extremely important. Things like the holistic interoperability. This is an example from Barcelona, where we've implemented a holistic solution so that basically everything is interconnected. So your travel plans, your ticketing, your reporting, everything is integrated into a single solution. So you as the citizens don't have any fuss around changing from one system to the other. Smart street lighting, where the intelligent lighting has aspect of course, public safety, but also on energy conservation, but also at the same time monitoring what's happening in your local areas. Smart traffic jam detection. How can you create green waves using simple camera monitoring technology? How can you facilitate parking spaces where you can either give people the opportunity to park smart outside the cities or to help them find parking in the cities by detecting where are the free parking spaces using analytics and things like cameras that's already in place. And things like warning systems when you have floodings. Last week I had a presentation from some of our Japanese colleagues that showed how they were doing flood warning systems in Malaysia. And this was like when the meter rise like 2-3 meters above, and I said, well, and they said, can't you use such a disaster system in Denmark? And I said, not really. We have a disaster when there's like 30 meters of water in the streets. But still different requirements. But all of that is there. Excellent. I think that's that from my end for now. You're welcome.
When you started with your own speciality with the healthcare system, you used the concept of mindset first of all. How important is that in order for this to happen?
Yeah, so I think mindset. I think that the reality we see, and this goes not only in public sector or healthcare or manufacturing, that the understanding of the impact of technology is not really present. I mean, there's a few forerunners who knows technology, but in hospitals and social services, those are generally some of the least digitized areas when we look at it. So, but it's also where there are among the highest potentials in digitalization. So I think that the use of sensor technology, for example, in hospitals will be vital in terms of enabling a completely new ecosystem of elder care handling, for example. So one of the aspirations of the European Union is to create what is called ambient active living, so where the elders have the ability to live longer in their own homes. And the way that technology can enable that is, of course, through telemedicine, for example. But it's also through what we've been doing in Finland, where we've developed something we call the home case. So when an elderly person phone up emergency services, the person say, I'm not feeling well, I need to go to the hospital. They rush with emergency services, and they come out, they realize, well, this elderly person is not so sick that the person needs to go to the hospital, but we still would like to monitor. So they leave behind a suitcase filled with technology, which have video-enabled capabilities, it's sensors, and it enables a direct link to professionals, to clinicians, so that they can actually help and coach the elder and observe the elder instead of bringing the elder to the hospital. And this is one of the areas where they're using technology to drive down cost, because the reality is that there is a factor like 10,000 between having a person in a hospital bed and having them in their own bed. So therefore there's a huge incentive for people, or for municipalities or for the government, to keep people in their own homes rather than to hospitalize them. And then on the back end, when you dismiss people from hospital, you also need to ensure that they are in well-being. So one of the things we are looking at right now is how can we create an ecosystem where we are producing secure food delivery, pharma delivery, and social care delivery as a kind of a digital package to elderly citizens after they've been to a hospital. So
it has to do, so therefore you need to accept the complete change in where to take care and help the patient. Any more questions? I mean, it's interesting that the small geographical distance between Sweden and Denmark has such a big impact in the ability, and especially as you mentioned that it was so fairly recently that all the municipalities were protecting their autonomy.
Yeah. So I think it has a lot to do with mindset, actually. So I think that in Denmark the mindset were, we are a municipality, we have the autonomy, we can do whatever we want to do the way we want it to be done. And this is our right because it says so in the constitution. But I think that the mindset was that we're 5 million people, Why is it that we should spend the same money, or not the same money, but multiple amounts of money on the same stuff over and over again? Why is it that we do that? Why don't we collaborate? So they established this, in Danish called tværoffentlig collaboration, which were pairing state, regions and local municipalities in a board that would then, they wouldn't take the decisions, but they would pointing to the right directions, and they would do an agreement that this was the right direction to go into. And then individually, all the municipalities then themselves decide whether they would follow through. And increasingly, they have followed through and are now building more and more common solutions. And in my view, I said this to a group of national Danish municipality CIOs a month or two ago. I said to them, sometimes I could wish for a little bit more Stalinism, a little bit more hard hand in driving unified solutions and common solutions. But I do think that we've come far down the road of homogenizing and ensuring that we have interoperability and we have shared services across municipalities. And I think that is the way to go. But not said that this would be a perfect model as it is.
Very interesting that you're not the first speaker who has been talking about more clear top-down leadership and quit talking so much and collaborate or trying to discuss through things, just do it. So as I'm not so familiar as you are with the climate out in the municipalities, how many of you would honestly say that that is a big obstacle in Sweden too? The willingness to protect your autonomy rather than succumb to a common system. Thanks for being honest. And that is mindset. We're all in the process and we're all learning. Thank you so much for inspiring us, and thank